All set. Okay. Good evening, everyone. This is the Public Safety Committee of the Baltimore City Council. My name is Warren Branch, Chairman of the committee. I'm joined to my left by Vice Chair Brandon Scott from the 2nd District, Councilman Costello from the 11th District.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
To my right, Mr. Marshall Bell, staff.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
To his right, Mr. Plymouth from the Council President's Office. I do know Angela Gibson was here in attendance, says she is, okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Commissioner, if we can have you introduce your people.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Mr. Vice Chair, committee members. I will start, I guess, to my left. In particular, Chief Rodney Hill is the chief of our Internal Affairs Division. This thing just kicked on. Kenesha Martin, Chief Kenesha Martin is here. Colonel Garnell Green, Lieutenant Colonel Melissa Hyatt is here as well. Mr. Glenn Morrow from our Legal Affairs is here. Am I missing anybody? Unintentionally? Oh, and Drew Vetter to my right from Legislative Affairs, et cetera.
Okay. Well, let me start off. This evening's hearing is on 13-0136R, an investigative hearing on the death of Tyrone West while in police custody. We have requested the acting Baltimore City Police Commissioner Davis and his command staff, the medical examiner's office, and the state's attorney's office to appear before the council to discuss the circumstances surrounding the tragic incident and provide a recap of the investigation. Okay. I guess it is, must be so, okay. Commissioner, we would like to allow you to introduce, you've already introduced your staff. If you can start with your presentation, we would appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to say, and I had an opportunity to say hello and introduce myself to members of the West family on the way in. And I do that because I want them to know, just like I want the community to know, that anytime there's a loss of life in the city, or anywhere for that matter, it's a tragedy. Anytime a loss of life occurs when it's a police-involved incident, it deserves the scrutiny and the full weight of our attention. And I understand the importance of that necessary scrutiny, because if we're perceived not to give it the attention that it deserves, then we lose trust with a community that will only partner with us if they see us respecting them and respecting life. So I don't take lightly any loss of life in the city. Baltimore Police Department recognizes the sanctity of human life, and when a police encounter results in death, you have my word that we will move heaven and earth to get to the bottom of the circumstances that led up to that loss of life. So I will turn it over to Chief Rodney Hill to speak specifically about the details that he can share at the moment, but I just want to, sir, just for you and for the West family, I understand law enforcement's role in society. That role involves a great degree, especially now more than ever, and in Baltimore, more importantly than anywhere else in America, transparency, transparency, transparency. So we'll share with you now, or Chief Hill will share with you some facts and details regarding this in-custody death.
Evening, Mr. Chair, members of the board. This is a report. This was a independent review board, which was initially commissioned by then Commissioner Anthony Batts. It was initiated in 2014, January 23rd, 2014, and concluded in August 2014. The review board was made up of members not of the police department. The name's Dr. James Stewart. He was the chair. Dr. Stewart is a member of the group is called CN. which is a consulting group out of Virginia. They handle police consulting matters and business consulting. Professor Amy Dillard, she's a law professor at the University of Maryland School of Law. Her specialty is in criminal defense. Dr. Patrick Finley, PhD, Howard Community College. His specialty was in defensive tactics. Chief Barney Malakian, he is a retired chief from Oakland Police Department. Dr. Hamed Shabazz, he's a PhD in Stevenson University. He's the chair of the criminal justice program there. And Dr. Shirley Thompson, she's a medical doctor, private physician. We wanted to have a medical physician on this board. This was approximately a 7-month investigation done by the IRB, and the IRB did not have, they were commissioned to look over the homicide and the internal affairs investigation. So it was not a separate investigation with investigative subpoena powers and things like that. They did not call witnesses. What they did was take the investigations, look through them. We had a number of briefings in which we would brief them on certain things, and they would convene. They had a number of times in which they convened amongst themselves, and they came to the findings that they did. They came out with 7 issue areas, and within those issue areas, 18 different findings and recommendations. I'll just hit the 7 areas because it gets very detailed and broken down. This is a public document. I can make sure, Mr. Chair, if you don't have it, we'll make sure you have copies are sent, but this was a public document. The 7 issue areas that the IRB found was dealing with officer judgment, decision-making. They were concerned about the transfer of officers to specialized units because this was a plainclothes ops unit out of the Northeast District. Use of force policies, officer tactics and procedures, professional and objective investigative protocols, care of life and emergency life-saving protocols, and communication and transparency. At the very end, the members of the board did not find that the officers violated any policy. However, they did feel that the officers, their tactics, and the exact wording I wanted to find so I don't misspeak, they had concerns with the tactics in which were used. They did not say that they felt that they necessarily violated, but they felt the tactics could have been much better. Specifically, they were concerned with the tactics of what we call contact cover. One officer, the way contact cover, one officer's contact with the person they're dealing with, another person's cover, you stay back. They felt that the officers broke that. They felt that they didn't follow procedure, in not calling for a uniform officer backup. They felt that if uniform officers were there, that might have made a difference. They also felt that the officers had the ability to use discretion and disengage. They felt once the fight was going on, it should have stopped. The altercation lasted for approximately 4 minutes. There were, in terms of some of the life-saving protocols they talked about, they felt that the officers there should be better training dealing with heat advisories and understanding. If you remember that day, it was approximately, the heat index at about 100 degrees. I don't recall what the humidity exactly was, but I do recall being out there that night, and it was a very, very humid night. So they felt in terms of certain life-saving protocols that the department should make sure that officers are trained and bulletins are placed out. Out of all the things that were recommended, we then commissioned certain members in the agency to make sure all the recommendations were followed through. Because it is several pages, I would just hit just a couple of the recommendations, and then I can just answer any questions that you have. I think that might be easier. But in terms of tactical procedures, they talked about the Baltimore police ensuring that there's better supervision of these ops units and making sure that the officers who are in there have more time on. That policy was changed to ensure that it couldn't just be someone who's 1 or 2 years fresh out the academy. They were concerned with the use of force policies and ensuring that there was accountability. That's one of the things that we've started to do, and it kind of aligns with the 21st century policing. in terms of the accountability, the use of IEPRO better. We're right now in Internal Affairs looking to put together I haven't given a name for what the team will be called, but their job will just simply go through the IEPRO, make sure use of force is done properly. The training for the OC spray, I'm sorry, that was one thing that they had concerns with, because the officers talked about they were also overcome with OC spray when OC spray was deployed, and the OC spray, which is also known as a pepper spray, it's supposed to be sprayed at a 3-foot distance. It was not sprayed. It was much closer, and the officers were overcome with it. They were concerned about the tactics used in terms of defensive tactics and thought maybe there should be different types of training. One of the big things that they talked about was investigations being done by a special unit, and shortly thereafter, we had the force investigation team. We're looking to tighten that up even more and making some other changes. There were some recommendations as it pertains to the Office of the Chief Medical Examiner, their protocols, and the length of time it took to give a report. But again, that was an area that we have no control over, so there were no changes to what we could make with that. So in closing, there were a number of changes and recommendations. I can tell you it was definitely something that we jumped in, make sure it got done. I remember talking to, and I don't say this lightly, I can remember talking to Mr. West's uncle at one point in time early on. And I told him, I said, listen, let me tell you something. Mr. Tyrone West did not die in vain. It's unfortunate this occurred. I wish it didn't happen. It's a very sad, there's nothing that you can do to bring a person back and change it. But I said, I can assure you that as a result, that there will be changes to the Baltimore Police Department, and that's what's been done. I don't know if you have any questions for me, sir.
Any questions? Anyone from the committee? Okay. No, thanks. The medical examiner's office had declined to appear at today's hearing. Is there anyone from the state's attorney's office? Anyone? Okay. Commissioner, you want to add?
I was trying to subtly lower that. The police department's role when it comes to in-custody deaths, and Chief Hill articulated how we went outside of our organization and identified subject matter experts from across the country to come in and take a hard look on how we handled this situation. We will not hesitate to involve anyone who can help make us better. So one of the things Chief Hill mentioned and strongly alluded to throughout his remarks is we have become better because of what we've learned regarding our performance with this tragedy. And while that certainly is far, far from bringing your loved one back, it has enhanced our capacity to serve this community. This profession is one where we deal with dynamic scenarios all the time. And with the officers and detectives that are assigned to specialty units, and Commissioner Batts made it a point to ensure that those officers that we assign to those specialty units can operate consistent with the expectations of this community, given the fact that they use a high amount of discretion in terms of their enforcement tactics. So Baltimore has learned lessons from this. We've improved from it. We're far from perfect. We're not perfect. But we've become better because of this. And Mr. Chair, I know this isn't the first time that this in-custody death has come up before you, but your personal involvement, the involvement of this subcommittee has served to ensure that we take this seriously, and that's not scrutiny that we run from. We realize that we have a responsibility that no other profession in America has. We can engage in scenarios where lives can be lost and freedom can be taken. So that's an awesome amount of responsibility for a police department. It's an awesome amount of responsibility for a 25-year-old cop working the streets of Baltimore, and he or she will perform based on our leadership capacity, and we've gotten better because of this scrutiny. Any questions, Mr. Chair? Thank you.
There's a sign-in sheet that we had people sign in to testify. I just shared with my staff that we're not going to accept any testimony at this time because during the first two hearings, I believe that this committee have heard much of what everyone had to say, and this was prior to the Freddie Brown hearing. So we've heard your cries. We've heard the heartfelt from the family members at those hearings, and we allowed everyone to speak at quite a long length of time to get out their frustration. To get out their frustration. I asked, well, that's, you have, well, that's good. Well, we've heard testimony for the last two hearings, and we believe that we don't have to, that I'm not going to allow no more public testimony. Now, the reason why I asked for the state's attorney's office here is simply because I wish this committee had the power to do much more. But prior to me coming into office, I want to reflect on three other cases that occurred before the Freddie Brown case. Case number one, May of 2012, Maurice Donald Johnson, mother called 911 for fire and police to escort her son, who suffers from bipolar mental diseases, to the hospital for treatment. He was shot 2 times at point blank range after he was treated aggressively by the officers that knew of his mental illness and all altercations that occurred. His mother had filed a petition with the Supreme Court, and I know we've all, as council people, have been notified. That happened in 2007. Case number 2, September 2012, Anthony Anderson, a resident of the District 13 in which I live, senior, died during a drug arrest. His spleen and ruptured. A panel found no evidence that circumstances surrounding Anthony Anderson's death amounted to the crime. A determination already made by prosecutors, but made some recommendations for how police can better track their use of force. And the third case was the Tyrone West case, in which we've heard in the city council. Now, in each one of those cases, it was clearly mentioned that, and we heard the cries from the family and members that was out in the street and who witnessed things and testified as to the amount of pressure that they was receiving, especially from officers that was out there in the street. So when the Freddie Brown case took wings and the death of him occurred, many people were impressed. They were impressed by the reactions from the state's attorney's office. If you, sir, you would please allow me to speak. I mean, I think that's very unfair. Freddie Gray. Freddie Gray, in the Freddie Gray case. And many people was impressed by the actions that the state's attorney's office took. And they felt, the families that I spoke with, the 3 families that I spoke with, loved the fact that there was an independent outside investigation. I'm not calling your investigation with the police department false, but I do believe that the families should have had the opportunity with other entities to investigate, to to have other agencies investigate. I mean, there's some things that still doesn't sit well with me, and that's with the amount of time that officers are given in order to introduce their statements into to the department. But the people were impressed with the independent investigation that the state's attorney's office took. And those three families asked, if I would ask the state's attorney if she would reopen these three cases, if she would reopen these three cases and reinvestigate these three cases. Because somewhere down the line, I mean, we've been hearing all the time that the officers did everything by the book. In the first case with Mr. Maurice Donald Johnson, his mother, who was a healthcare nurse, she insisted that before the officers that came in to subdue her son, she asked that they call for backup because he did have bipolar. She introduced certain facts to me that looked perfectly credible. The medical examiner deemed it as a homicide, but she didn't feel that she was given any relief. I ask again, I mean, I don't have the power from this seat to make the state's attorney's office reinvestigate these hearings, but I would certainly like to ask if she would reintroduce and reinvestigate these three cases prior to the Freddie Gray's case because of circumstances that happened afterwards. I mean, if we're going to be transparent, let's be transparent. I think these three families deserve relief just like the Freddie Gray's family
Thank you.
have received relief. I know the case is still held in court. I'm not saying that it's not for me to judge whether the police did anything right or wrong, but I do think that these families, these three prior families, I mean, to see one family given justice and the other three not given any justice, I don't think it's fair for them. And that's my statement to the state's attorney's office. At that point, I'm going to leave it. I'm going to actually conclude with this public safety investigation hearing. I really wish the state's attorney's office was here because these families really do need to sit down. And they really, I mean, she was voted into office and she said that she was going to be transparent. Let's see if she's going to be transparent. Look out for these other three families also.
Excuse me, I came here as a friend of the family of Tyrone West. I've never testified before on the public safety committee hearings. And I would like to speak. I think it's outrageous that you've allowed the police to speak and no one else.
Right.
Well,
Yes, it was.
believe this is about the fourth hearing that we held. And at the first two hearings, and the family will attest to it, we've given people a limited amount of time to testify. So, I mean,
This new commissioner never heard my family speak. This is the second time. He never heard my family speak.
And we should testify
well,
until we die. Until we die.
I hear what you're saying. I'm asking if the state's attorney's office will reopen your case again, because I do think that you have been treated unjustly. Okay? If I had the power from this chair in order to correct all your wrongs, I would do it from right here. But I don't have that power. The state's attorney's office have that power to reopen these cases. And they did it with quite speed, with an independent investigation. And that's what
You have the power to let us speak. Okay, that's how we pay for this. You don't pay for nothing.
Well-
The taxpayers pay for this.
Well,
The
it-
taxpayers pay for that seat you sit in, clown.
Well, at this time, I'm going to conclude with this Public Safety Committee investigation hearing. Okay?
You should die.
This committee stands adjourned.
Die like in the hospital.
This committee stands adjourned, and we thank you all for attending the public safety hearing. Please check the area around you, your seat. Make certain that you have everything that you brought with you. And we will be closing the room shortly and ask that everyone exit promptly to the first floor.
Can't stop, we won't stop.
Thank you.
Killer cops on cell blocks. Can't stop, we won't stop till killer cops on cell blocks. No justice, no peace. No justice, no peace. No justice, no peace. Justice for Tyrone West. Justice for Tyrone West. Justice for Tyrone West. Justice for Tyrone West. Justice for all victims.
That's what you need to do.
Of police brutality. Of police brutality. No justice. No peace. 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 Justice for Tyrone West. Justice for Tyrone West. Justice for all victims.
Get out of here. Get out of here. Ask the police to escort him out of here.
Indicted in the death of Freddie Gray.
Please,
But
please.
12 to 15